Welcome to What You Didn't Hear, the podcast where we dive into the overlooked stories that happened on the same days as history's biggest events. While the world was watching one headline, countless other stories quietly unfolded, some fascinating, some tragic, and some that changed lives in ways we've never heard about. In each episode, we'll take you beyond the front page and shine a light on the moments history forgot. Because every day holds more than one story, and it's time those voices were heard. Now join me and learn more about what you didn't hear on October 1st.
Check it out! Back it up! Yeah. Drop it down! Make it shake! Ow! History! 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 History!
October 1st is the day the Ford Model T first went on sale. The Model T was the first mass-produced automobile using a rolling assembly line, making it the first affordable car available to the middle-class Americans in 1908. Until 1914, the Model T could be purchased in gray, red, green, and blue. However, in 1914, Ford began to only produce the Model T in black to streamline production and keep costs low. But was Ford dropping this sick whip in 1908 the only event that took place on the first day of October throughout history? Impossible. While the Ford's Model T's introduction to the streets of the United States is a significant event, there are many other events that we don't hear about on this very same day. In 331 BC, Alexander the Great defeats Darius III of Persia in the Battle of Gaugamela. The Battle of Gaugamela is the second and final battle between the two kings and was the final blow to Darius III, resulting in Alexander's conquest of Persia. Three different accounts are given of Darius III's attempts to negotiate peace terms with Alexander the Great, the last of which would recognize Alexander the Great as a co-equal to Darius III. Alexander rejected all negotiation attempts. While fleeing to the east to attempt to build another army and face Alexander again in battle, King Darius III was murdered by one of his viceroys. Alexander hunted down this viceroy and had him executed. The majority of the remaining viceroys gave their loyalty to Alexander and were allowed to maintain their rank and titles. Edgar I, the Peaceful, is crowned King of all England in 959. Leading up to his kingship, England was fractured, violent, and volatile. Previously, his brother ruled as King of England and implemented a host of divisive policies. King Edgar I made it his goal to reverse all of these policies and repair England's relationship with the Church. Gerard of Rydfort, the Grand Master of the Knights Templar during the Third Crusade, is killed at the Siege of Acre in 1189. Gerard of Rydfort is believed to either be Flemish or possibly of Anglo-Norman background, and while it's unclear when he arrived in the Kingdom of Jerusalem, he is in the charter record in the service of Baldwin IV, and held the rank of Marshal of the Kingdom. After recovering from a serious illness, he took vows as a Templar and was elected as Grand Master in late 1184. Gerard of Rydfort had been captured by Saladin before in a previous battle, and negotiated his release successfully. Upon bringing the Templars to the Siege of Acre, he was captured by Saladin's forces again, and was beheaded. In 1529, Martin Luther and Huldrych Zwingli meet at the Marburg Colloquy to unite Protestants. While they reached agreement on 14 theological points, the 15th they could not come to agreement on, and the meeting was considered a failure. The 15th theological topic was whether or not Christ's true body and blood were physically present in the sacrament of the Lord's Supper. Luther maintained that the body was present in, with, and under the bread and wine, whereas Huldrych viewed the supper as a spiritual memorial. In 1569, Queen Elizabeth has the Duke of Norfolk arrested for conspiring to marry Mary, Queen of Scots. During the 80 Years' War, in which the Netherlands were rebelling against Spanish rule, the Siege of Leyden ended on October 1st in 1574, when the Prince of Orange successfully had 4 dikes destroyed, flooding the countryside and severely damaging one of Leyden's walls. Some 20,000 Spanish soldiers drowned in the floods, and as a result of this defeat, the Spanish treasury ran dry. The Spanish army could not be paid, and it mutinied and looted the city of Antwerp to collect their pay. The pillaging of Antwerp united the Netherlands in their rebellion against Spain. 1661 marks the beginning of the sport of yachting in England when King Charles II beats his brother James, Duke of York, in a yacht race from Greenwich to Gravesend. Yachting has been an official Olympic sport since its inception in 1896. In 1844, on October 1st, Ludwig Leichhardt, a German explorer, departs the farthest outpost on the Queensland Darling Downs to begin his exploration of Australia's Northern Territory from Moreton Bay to Port Essington. Louisa May Alcott publishes the novel Little Women in 1868 with Roberts Brothers of Boston. On the same day, the St. Pancras railway station opens in London. At the time, it was the largest single-span roof in the world at 689 feet long and 100 feet high. It is considered to be the pinnacle of Victorian Gothic architecture. In 1888, National Geographic publishes its first magazine on October 1st. On the same day in 1890, U.S. Congress votes to create the Weather Bureau and establishes Yosemite National Park in California. The following year, Stanford University opens its doors after being founded by Leland Stanford and his wife Jane Stanford with a $40 million donation. Among its first graduating class is future President Herbert Hoover. In 1905, František Pavlik is assassinated in a demonstration in Prague, inspiring Leos Janáček to write his Piano Sonata 1X 1905. In 1907, U.S. President Theodore Roosevelt calls on financier J.P. Morgan to help manage the U.S. financial crisis after a downturn in the stock markets leads to a run on the dollar. The 1st Division of Canadian troops set sail for Britain in 1914. 33,000 Canadian volunteers eager to join the war effort in Europe and prove their loyalty to the Commonwealth. In 1918, under Thomas Edward Lawrence, aka Lawrence of Arabia, combined British and Arab forces captured Damascus from the Turks during World War I. In 1916, 2 years after joining the British Army, Lawrence traveled to Mesopotamia and Arabia on intelligence missions and became involved with the Arab revolt against the Ottoman Empire. Later, he would author the book 7 Pillars of Wisdom, recounting his service in the British military and his involvement in the Arab revolt. The Flying Finn, Paavo Nurmi, sets the 4 and 5 mile run world record at 19 minutes 15 seconds and 24 minutes and 6 seconds in 1924. On the same day, in 1928, the Flying Finn would run the 15K world record in 46 minutes and 49 seconds. Also, on October 1st that same year, Los Angeles International Airport opens in the Westchester section of Los Angeles. In 1933, baseball legend Babe Ruth pitches his final game at Yankee Stadium and hits his 34th home run of the season in the 5th inning. The following year, in violation of the Treaty of Versailles, Adolf Hitler orders the expansion of the German Army and Navy in 1934. With the help of German aviation engineers post-World War II, the F-86 Sabre makes its first flight from Edwards Air Force Base in 1947. The F-86 Sabre dominated the air over Korea during the Korean War and became a symbol of the Cold War. It was developed by North American Aviation using German aerodynamic research from World War II. It was the first jet fighter to have a swept wing design, putting the wings at a 35-degree angle and allowing for greater speed. The kill ratio for the Sabre against the MiG-15 during the Korean War was almost 10 to 1. In 1951, the 24th Infantry Regiment, the last all-black U.S. military unit, is deactivated. At the end of World War II, the 24th Infantry Regiment was assigned to the occupation of Japan until being reassigned to the Korean War. Their poor performance in the Korean War was subjected to heavy criticism after being hastily thrown into combat with little to no training for combat in Korea. Their regiment was disbanded and soldiers were reassigned to other units, marking the end of segregation in the U.S. Army following Harry Truman's Executive Order 9981. In 1962, James Meredith enrolls in the University of Mississippi, becoming its first black student. His arrival at the university was guarded by hundreds of federal troops after the Ole Miss riot. On the same day, in 1962, Johnny Carson hosts his first The Tonight Show on NBC. His guests included Joan Crawford and Mel Brooks. On October 1st, 1967, Pink Floyd arrives in New York to begin their first tour in the U.S. following the release of their debut album, The Piper at the Gates of Dawn. At this point in time, Syd Barrett was still with the band. The following year, in March of 1968, Syd Barrett would part ways with Pink Floyd due to his declining mental health made worse by drug use. He was replaced by David Gilmour, who joined the band in late December of 1967, as a backup to the unreliable founder of the band. In 1975, but not on October 1st, Pink Floyd would release the album Wish You Were Here, dedicated to the original guitarist following the release of Dark Side of the Moon. Fun fact, Dark Side of the Moon matches up quite well to The Wizard of Oz. It's commonly referred to as the Dark Side of the Rainbow. In 1968, George Romero's Night of the Living Dead premieres in Pennsylvania. Now we'll look into the origins of the phrase, barking up the wrong tree. I'm sure all of us have heard this common English phrase, but where did it come from? When did it originate? This may seem self-explanatory, but it is credited to the early 19th century in the United States from the hunting practice of using hound dogs to track prey like raccoons. When the prey animal would escape to another tree, the hound dogs would often mistakenly continue barking at the first tree, leading hunters to find no animals there. Over the years, it became a commonplace phrase in American literature to describe somebody who was misguided or pursuing a mistaken course of action. Thank you for tuning in to What You Didn't Hear on October 1st through history. If you're just finding this podcast, I hope you enjoyed, and will come back next time. Please leave a review and share with your history-intrigued friends. Connect with me on YouTube or Instagram at What You Didn't Hear. Links are in the episode description. And until next time, this was What You Didn't Hear.